Please.
Okay, shalom again, everybody. Okay, Seder. Okay, shalom. It's so nice to be here, as usual. Thank you. I thank the Daniela, Hilan, Tzia. Thank you. Again, today we're going to be traveling through, I guess, Shas and Mefarshim instead of traveling through the country. So we'll do that hopefully at some point in the future again. What I wanted to talk about today, all right, let's start like this. After this, I have to go out and buy some plastic froggies for the Seder, right? Isn't that what everybody does? You know, you buy plastic frogs to throw at the grandkids.
Yeah, buy real ones.
But you can make some.
Buy real?
We do.
Impressive. What does that have to do with the share? Obviously, there's all kinds of different minhagim that I'm sure that if we had the time, all of us could sit around and share the different things we do in our families to make the Seder come alive. I had I think this is well known, I had once a Talmidah who's, I think, Persian background, and they had this thing about, right, with the matzahs, flipping it and it goes around, like, where you coming from Mitzrayim, where you going to Yerushalayim, and it goes around the table. So it's kind of different minhagim, but we're really like a little bit, ADD or something at the, a little bit overactive at the Seder night. And there's reasons for that. So that I would like to talk about the title over here, that's the only thing in English, is the educational pedagogical insights of Chazal on the Seder night. And as you can see, and there's like everyone has a lot of different backgrounds, so I'll explain everything in English, but if I over-explain or under-explain, please let me know, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to ask three questions, and then afterwards we're going to learn a little bit of a sugya and take a look over our shoulders at what the greatest pedagogue and educator that we know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has to say about the Seder night, and maybe that will help us understand the Rambam. That's what we have in line over here for the next hour or so. And so let us begin. We start in the Seder night, we have two d'oraisas. When we sit down on the Leil Pesach, we have two mitzvot d'oraita, two mitzvot from the Torah. It's going to be eating matzah, ube'erev tochlu matzot, and also the sipur of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that we have to explain, the going out from Mitzrayim. And also, there's three mitzvot d'Rabbanan, Moror, eating moror, and Hallel, and the Arba Kosot. So it's going to be your D'Rabbanan. When we have a Korban, Bezrat Hashem, everybody here should think about it a little bit, give some thought if you prefer goat or sheep, because you only got 2 weeks to prepare. So, but then we'll have another 16 mitzvot d'oraisa. So there's a lot going on, but what we're going to focus in on is some of those that we're most aware of, particularly the kosot. So let's take a look at number 1 on your page. Roman number 1. This is the first question. This is somewhat famous. People who learned in yeshivot, some of this stuff is like walking down memory lane from the famous stuff you did, like the famous Reb Chaim from the yeshiva. You'll enjoy it. A lot of fun. Okay. Number 1. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et atzmo. Says the Mishnah in Masechet Pesachim. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa min Mitzrayim. Every single generation, we have to view ourselves as if we are actually walking out of Egypt. Shneimar, v'yigadet lebincha bayom hahu le'emor, b'avor zeh asal Hashem li b'tzeisi min Mitzrayim. In other words, this happened to me. We view ourselves, if you're Hasidic, then you obviously will view that the same spiritual atmosphere that existed at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim is happening now. It's not just historical commemoration, but you should view yourself as if you're leaving Mitzrayim. And therefore, lefichach anachnu chayavim, and we're supposed to lahodot, to thank and to praise, la'alel, shabech, lefayel, l'ramim, la'adir, levarech, la'alel, kales. The misha sha'as alavoseinu v'lanu, it's called nisim, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu did all these nisim. And the Mishnah itself is really very lengthy as far as hotzianu me'avdut l'chayrot, me'yagon l'simcha, from sadness to happiness, me'evel l'yom tov, me'afilah l'or gadol. Interesting Mishnah. Mishibud l'geula, we go from servitude to redemption. V'nomar l'fan of hallelujah. Rava just adds on another pasuk. V'otanu hotzi misham. We're not sure right now what he's adding, but otanu, we, like the collective, Hashem took out. And so the first question is a famous question, right? I just say now Rambam, and you guys could probably answer back. What's the question that we always ask on the Rambam? Number 2 on the page. The Rambam writes, he changes the Lashon. He either had a different girsa in the Mishnah or he changed it himself. The Rambam writes what? The underlines. Chol dor vador. He's quoting the Mishnah. The Rambam, as a rule, likes to quote the Mishnah and the Gemara when he can. Chol dor vador chayav adam laharot et atzmo. Ki'ilu hu ba'atzmo yatsa. Ata, right now. What's laharot mean? To show yourself. Yeah, to show it. And that's the beginning of this. The idea of like, not just to view yourself, but to show as if you just left Mitzrayim now. Ata, right this second, you just walked out. Yeshibud Mitzrayim. And I guess that's like, the dressing up and the passing around the matzah. And you're acting it out as if you're leaving Mitzrayim. And the Rambam now quotes that pasuk from Rava, V'otanu hotzi misham. Al davar zeh, where's the Rambam get this? Al davar zeh tzivah kadosh baruch hu b'torah v'zacharta ki eved hayita be'eretz Mitzrayim v'yotzecha Hashem elkecha. That you should remember that you were a slave in Egypt. Hashem took us out. Klomar ki ilu ata ba'atzmacha hayita eved v'yatzata l'cheruf v'nivdeisa. So with all the meforshim we ask on this Rambam is, what do you mean laharot et atzmo? It's not to view, but you have to show it. Where's the Rambam get that from? What's prompting the Rambam to say that it has to be like souped up a little bit, like not zooped up a little, not just to view yourself, but that you have to act it out? That's easy enough, right? Question number 1. All right, let's keep going. This gets a little bit more involved. The Gemara in Pesachim, question number 2. So the Mishnah tells us in Arvei Pesachim that that we have a mitzvah to lean, haseba. And there the mitzvah is, Afilo ani shebi Yisrael lo yochal ad sheyaseh. That even the poorest people in Israel, and they're getting their food from the soup kitchen, they still have to lean when they're eating. Why? What's the idea? What's the Mishnah trying to emphasize over here? What? Cheres. We're all free. We're all kings, and even the honey, he's got to view it, got to act out as if he's a king. Now, here's an interesting discussion in the Gemara, and we're going to read through the Gemara and then look at the Tosos and the Ran. The Gemara says the following: Itmar, we learned matzah tzarech haseba, and I brought the Rashis down below. But matzah, when you eat your matzah, you have to lean. Why do you have to lean? Because cheirut. Even though matzah's got 2 themes to it, it's lechem oni, but it's also, we had matzahs because what does it remind us of? That we left Mitzrayim. We ran out. Okay, so I have to act like a king, and therefore I have matzah tzarech haseba, that's pashut. Maror ain't tzarech haseba. Why not? Because it's better, it reminds us of the shiabud. Okay, that's easy. Yayin, what about when you have those kosot of wine? Itmar mishmei Rav Nachman, we learned from, it was said in the name of Rav Nachman, tzarech haseba, you are required to lean. V'itmar mishmei Rav Nachman, and we also have another brisa, or another, saying in the name of the same person, Rav Nachman, ain't tzarech haseba, that you don't have to lean. So that's a little bit of a problem, right? Do you have to lean or you don't have to lean? So the Gemara says, Lo pligi. Now there's no argument between these 2 sayings in the name of Rav Nachman. One is talking about habitarti kasi kamai. One's talking about tarti 2 kasi kosot kamai first. The first 2 kosot, habitarti kasi batra. And the other one's talking about the 2 last 2 out, the 3rd and the 4th kosot. Remember how it works in the Seder? It's been a year. Right? Remember that? We have first 2 kosot before eating, and then afterwards there's 2 kosot at Hallel and at the end of Birkas Hamazon. 2 sets of 2. So the Gemara says, obviously Rav Nachman was talking about, when he said tzarech haseba, he's talking about 2 kosot, and when he says it doesn't require haseba, he's talking about the other 2 kosot. Which one's which? Right? Famous comment. Well, which 2 do you have to lean and which 2 you don't have to lean? I get it. You just said, okay, you split it between 2 and 2, but which ones is it? So give us svara. Like, people are familiar with this Gemara, right? What's the svara? Give me a svara. Why would I say before?
second two are on the Gula part. The first two are on the Sipur.
Oh, so the first two we're talking about, we're still slaves. Avadim ayinu lefar b'mitzrayim. So therefore we're still slaves. So we're not going to be a king over there. We're not going to lean. And after the meal already, then we're feeling good. So we are going to lean. Okay, give me a counter, Svara. Give me the opposite. Say the opposite. When we go through the whole storyline, right, that would be the nice time to talk about it. And we're just Avadim, but we know the end of the story. We're going to get there, and God's taking us out. Most of that, God's taking us out. So that's why we should lean before the meal. And the latter two, after the meal, things sort of like take a dive. Right?
Is there anybody, the definition of a Seder, how far you have to lean?
It's not part of it.
That's
a very hard question.
Yeah, but it's not part of this discussion.
yeah.
Well, but the first
A
two
king. You
are,
got to be a king.
the first two are on mitzvot d'oraisa, and the second two are on the mitzvot d'Rabbanan, are on the chiyuv d'Rabbanan. Therefore, right? I mean, kiddush you have to make because that's the d'oraisa, the Kal show.
You don't have to drink wine.
Birkat HaMazon.
Well, Birkat HaMazon is also d'oraisa. Okay.
What you're saying is a Tosfos, really, that the one that's really deraisa is going to be the Kiddush, because I'm being Mekayim the deraisa.
Kiddush and Magid is, you said, it's a mitzvah deraisa.
But it could be that the takana over there for the coast is going to be a derabanan. Could be. We'll see.
Making Kiddush, you might be standing. Kind of hard to leave if you're standing.
When you sit down.
Sit down when you drink.
The truth is, we sit. As we stand for that one, I don't remember. My family, that gets into. Okay, that's a share for another time. Let's go on. So the Gemara itself gives these two svaras. Habitarti kasi batrai. Okay, so the Gemara says, we're on the second line in the middle. Omar le lahai gisa. So there are those who said to this direction. Va'omri le lahai gisa. And there's those who say to this direction. Omri le lahai gisa. There are those who say in this direction, meaning trei kosi kamai, the first two cups. Bori haseba, they require for you to lean. Because this is the beginning of the going into freedom. This is the whole story. And then after it's trei kosi batrai, lo bori haseba. The two kosot after the meal don't require haseba. Mai tahava have. Mashaya. Right? What was. Okay, you finish the story. And there are those who say the opposite direction. Adarabba, just the opposite. Trei kasi batrai, the two last kosot, bo haseba, they require leaning. Hahi shata to kahav yescheres, because at that point, right, you're free. The very end of the Haggadah is Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. We finally went into redemption. Then we have a meal that's fit for a king. Nobody eats anything because they're overstuffed with matzah, but the meal is like fit for a king. And then what happens? Okay, so that's the point. That's when you're in Cherut, that's when you should lean. But the trei kasi kamai, the first two cups, lo bari haseba, the ika avadim hayino, that we still have, the akati avadim hayino, still our slaves at that point. Okay, that's the two svarot. A shout out to the to Meir, who's sitting by the books. Okay, yeah, two svarot. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara answers, Lakati Avadim Yikamar. Hashta de itmar haki v'itmar haki. The Gemara says, now that we say like this and like this, they're both good svaras, and we really don't have anything that's going to be conclusive. Aidi ve'aidi bari haseba. So that's why we require haseba for all four cups. You don't really have to. You really just need for two of the cups. We don't know which two, so therefore we do all four. So far, so good?
What do we do for each four? Stand on?
We're leaning for all four. We have to have seba, let's say we have to lean for all four cups. When we drink the cups, we have to lean. Okay? So really, we only required for two, but we don't know which two, so therefore it comes out we have to do all four. All right, we're talking about, what did we say before? What kind of a mitzvah is the arba kosot, the four cups? D'Rabbanan. So the Ran over here, let's look at Tosas number 4. This is fun. Okay? Tosas says, Tosfot number 4, Kulu nami tzarech haseba, explains the Gemara, called Dalit kosot tzrichem haseba b'sha'at shtiyah, that all the four cups are required, that you should have haseba. He asks a question. V'tzorich iyun, and it's like something to study. Im shachach v'lo hesev, if a person forgot to lean when drinking the cup of wine, im yachzor v'yishta, does he have to go back and drink it again?
That's a reward.
It's a good question. What do I say? It's a reward.
It's tutorance.
Not if you have, I don't know if I have time for stories. I once went, but a quick story, I once went to Rav Shechter Shlita. I was in his shir in YU, and I went to his house for the Seder night. He said something like in class, like, does anybody want to come over for the Seder night? I think he had in mind those people who were stuck in New York. I don't know if it was a blanket thing, but I said, Rav Shechter's inviting, I'm coming. My mother was upset because she wanted me home. My father, who was an out-there European, said, the boy wants to be by the Rebbe for the Seder, let him go. So I went. So I told Rav Shechter's, that's his shita, Liparom Michaim L'chaim. Rav Soloveitchik was also known the shita that you have to have alcohol, because a king has alcohol. You can't do grape juice, none of this stuff. This is before they had Moscato. Nowadays everybody just drinks Moscato. That's how I get through Purim and Pesach. 5% is great. So, but anyway, so what did he say? So Rav Shechter said you have to have wine. I said, Rav Shechter, I can't have like some kind of when I drink wine, it starts burning me. I don't know if anybody has that. It's like burns me. I can't do it. He says, you're not drinking the right stuff. No, if I was drinking what's at Manischewitz extra heavy Malaga, that's probably was the where I went wrong. Anyway, I said, don't worry about it. So I sat next. I remember I drank 4 cups, straight wine. That year was great. I survived. No pains whatsoever. The next year I tried it again. I'm on the floor curled up in pain because I drank wine.
The same wine.
I don't know, or the tzaddik is gozer. The tzaddik was gozer, then I'll be okay, and I was okay. It's a ma'aser shahaya. Seriously. I don't know what happened. Then they came out with, remember they first came out, yayin kal? That stuff you would like choke on it. Then they came out with Moscato, and now everything's happy. So you got to get the red one, though. So anyway, let's go back to work. So Tosas says, "V'tzorch iyun and shachach v'lo hesed." So what's the tzorch iyun? He's not sure. What's the problem? Why is he not clear about? So this is what we look at number 5 on the page of the Ran. The Ran is also, you can see the dates. He's also a Rishon. He says like this. He has a great question. Va'afagav de ba'alma kaimalan ibcha. He's asking a question. He says, like, why is it that we have to lean for all 4 cups? Why? Call sfeika derabanan lekula. We have a cloud that a suffix and a din derabanan goes lekula. If those aren't, what does that mean? That when you're talking about a mitzvah derabanan, if you have a suffix, you're not sure if you accomplished it or not, then you don't have to bother yourself to do it again. It's okay. For example, according to some understanding, the simplest example would be, I forgot if I said a bracha. Right? I'm in the middle of my tea and I say, wait a second, did I say a bracha on this tea? Do I have to say a bracha again? So some take the approach that because a bracha is a din derabanan, a safek in a din derabanan, I go lakula. And when I have a doubt of accomplishment of a din derabanan, I could be lenient. So I don't have to say another bracha. That's an example of it. Let's see. I washed hands for a seuda, netilas yadayim for a seuda, and then after I start thinking about it, oh wait, the cup I used, where is it? Somebody threw it out, but that cup wasn't so large. I don't have any more water. I'm out in the field. I'm on a tiyul. Finally got to a tiyul. So I don't know if I poured enough water. So that's again a din derabanan, suffix derabanan lakula. So we have these. It's a klal. It's a general rule we have within halacha. So the Ran says over here that do I have to lean for these 2 or do I have to lean for these 2? Every time I start to drink that cup of wine, I don't know if I have to lean, right? I'm in doubt. It's a suffix derabanan. Maybe I have to lean at the other set. So every single cup I'm drinking, it's a suffix derabanan. If I have to lean, forget it. Suffix derabanan, no leaning whatsoever. That's a great question. Why do I have to lean at all? It's din derabanan. What would you answer? Usually the Ran has 2 answers. We'll see in a second. Anybody here want to throw out something? Because you'll see, usually you get it right. You get both sides. It's a great question, no?
Once what do you do if you forget? You can apply that principle, but you don't rely on it.
Why not?
You don't need to rely on it because there's no harm in doing it.
Okay, you're miskaving to the first answer of the Ran. Okay?
What was that?
He said basically, what's the big deal? There's no harm in doing it. So what? You're going to have to lean? Big deal. In other words, it's not a tircha. So just go ahead and do it. You got nothing lost over here.
Okay. But again, the first cup, which is Kiddush, in itself, that's not a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. You have to make Kiddush d'Oraisa.
Okay.
Right? So since that would be a d'Oraisa, maybe then that, at least on that cup, you do have to make,
maybe.
according to the Ran, which should be what the Ran would say.
And he does, but that's a good question. I know. Yes?
I mean, if I don't lean at all, then I know I didn't lean for the two that I needed to lean for.
Oh, you're fair. Second answer, the Ran. So excellent. Boy,
Didn't hear.
you guys have to. What does he say? Basically, I'm getting rid of the whole takana of chachamim that I have to lean. If you take a look at number 5 again, look at the third line of number 5. Says the Ran, hacha here in this case, kivan de lav milta de tirchehi, being that it's not a big deal, ma'avidina l'ravcha de milsa v'revach. In other words, I do in order that for the greater good of the matter. Big deal. So lean. What's the big deal? So lean. You don't know. Maybe you're right. Suffolk to Rabbanan l'kula. I shouldn't have to lean. He says lean. But then he says v'linireh. The Ran himself says the al korchach ba'i leme'evad haseba b'kula. We have to do haseba in all of them. Di'i nezal l'kula, because if you're going to use the general principle of safek to Rabbanan l'kula, then what's going to happen? Amay nekal bahani tfei mehani. How are you going to know where to go l'kula? And why should you make l'kula lenient in these more than those? And you can't choose between the first set of 2 or the last set of 2. V'nekel b'travayon. And if I'm going to be makel to the point that I'm not leaning at all, ha mi'ikra mitzvot mitzvat haseba legamrei. I just got rid of the takana. So the Ran says he's got 2 different reasons. There is a difference in opinion on these 2. What would be? Well, one answer is because what's the big deal? Just lean. What's your problem? The other answer is no, you can't do that. You can't say something to Rabbanan l'kula when it's going to completely uproot the entire takana. Oh, so what's the nafka mina, the practical halachic difference between these 2 answers of the Ran? Here's a case. I remember this well. I had just gotten married. My wife's from Muncie, and we're eating at Aunt Florence's house. And it happened to be one of those cold Aprils in New York. Freezing. It was really freezing at night. So we're walking on the way home, and it was like a 20-minute walk. It's torture after eating all that matzah and having all that wine, have to walk 20 minutes in freezing cold. And I was thinking, what happened? We got about halfway down. What would have happened if at that point all of a sudden I realized I never leaned when I drank all those cups of wine? So it depends. Do I have to go back and do I have to drink again? I don't have any wine in the house. I have to go back to Aunt Florence. So she's a nice person. So what are you saying? Huh?
First Seder or second Seder?
Well, haseba is not exactly a mitzvah d'oraisa.
Yeah, but the Ran's answer, no, it's I didn't do the takana. So if you answer the first answer of the Ran that what's the big deal? It's not a tircha, so go ahead and lean. What's your problem? You're sitting at the table. Now it's a tircha, so I wouldn't have to go back. But according to the second answer of the Ran, you can't go ahead and uproot completely a takana d'Rabbanan. How did you just go through the Seder night without leaning for your arba kosa? So according to the second answer of the Ran, I would have to go back. Nafka mina l'halacha, and that's the tzarchiyin of Tosas. Tosas is not clear what you do. What's
you go back, you have to drink again?
I'd have to drink again.
Yeah, but if it's after Chatzot, then what do you do?
I know you got. There's a lot of good questions, and according to those who say that the arba kosot only are your yotze only arba kosot when it's on the Seder, then it's also a problem. There's a lot of problems. Okay, but all right, we got to focus. So like this, let's keep going. So that's question number. So that's an interesting, Ron. I want to present that to you.
Whatever Rabbi Nachman did, he have all 4, or you only lean the 2?
It depends who you ask. Rabbi Nachman knew what he had in mind. It's just we don't know what he had in mind. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's now the question. So that's our second point. So now the question is the second point. Is there a possible other answer to the Ran's question? We're going to look for a different answer to the Ran's question. Ran asked, why is it that I have to lean for the arba kosa, suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula? We're going to be looking for a different answer. The third question, then we'll develop the idea and move on. Number 3 on your page. This is a great a Rush in Pesachim. The Rush has a different question. This is so much fun. All this stuff happens, right? V'im ochal matzah below haseba. What do we say? Lo yatsa, according to the Rush. I was going to keep an eye on the clock. So, im ochal matzah below haseba lo yatsa. And therefore the underline, next line. V'im ochal below haseba yakzor v'yochal v'haseba. You forgot to lean when you eat the matzah. According to the Rush, what do you have to do? Go back and eat it again. Okay. So that's a great question. We'll get to that in a second. But we're talking about matzah over here, specifically matzah. Is it going to help me to worry about the rest of the meal? Do I have to lean the rest of the meal? When you're eating your eggies, everybody has eggies, froggies, eggies, right? When you're eating those eggies, do you have to lean? I don't know. There's no doubt I have to eat the matzah. Look at the Rambam over here. Now, it's not meforsh in the Rambam. Excuse me?
Some are lenient.
Some are lenient. It got salt water, right? Okay. The Fichach, look at the Rambam number 7. Turn the page, yeah. The Fichach, Kesheso'ed Adam Balayla Hazeh. The Rambam's writing over here. It's a lengthy Rambam. I just brought a piece. When the person is doing his Seudah, he's eating on this night of Pesach, Tzarech le'achol v'lishtot v'hu meisiv derech erus. Person should eat and drink, and he should be leaning because that's the sign of a free person. But when is it that you should be leaning? Okay? Now we all would say matzah, we're conditioned. We say matzah, we say kosot, like we're conditioned. Look at the Rambam. When you eat the matzah, got it. Got it. Vishar achilato shtiyato im hesev, and the rest of the meal, the eggies, im hesev, eggies means eggs, right, in normal talk. Vishar achilato v'shtiyato im hesev, when you eat, harei ze meshubach, right, when you're eating, if you're leaning, harei ze meshubach, that's praiseworthy, v'im lav, ein otzach, but you don't have to. What does that mean according to the... So from this Rambam alone, what would you say? If I did not lean while eating my matzah, what would the Rambam say you do?
Come back. Have another drink.
Anybody? What can you be medaik? It's not written mefurash, but what can you medaik? And this is what actually number 8, the Grizz, just to say time, I didn't bring down the whole thing, but we'll talk it out. Where do you get this thing from the Rambam, hareza meshubach? Means according to the Rambam, when I eat those eggs, yeah, I should be leaning.
But if you don't, you don't.
But if you don't, you don't. But if I do, what do you mean hareza meshubach? Why is it meshubach? My aleh shalom, my mother would yell at me, like, why are you leaning? Why are you schlimping at the table? Like, why? Why is that meshubach? Where do you get that? What's meshubach about it?
You're showing that you're
So what does that mean? It means according to the Rambam, Heseba is a mitzvah that stands on its own. Right? According to the Rambam, to lean is just something that you could do throughout the entire meal, and it's meshubach. Why? Because you're accomplishing the mitzvah. Meaning that the Rambam will say, we say in the yeshiva, it's atzmai, it's a mitzvah atzmai. It's an independent mitzvah, not necessarily bound to the eating of the matzah. Meaning...
But if you've done it already on the matzah, then you fulfilled your haseba.
You fulfilled, but I still could accomplish...
You may not have to do it later on.
But I don't have to, but I can accomplish it later on. Hareza meshubach. That means I got the mitzvah even outside of eating matzah. It means according to the Rambam, this is what the Grizz says. You could argue, but he says, Yimadaik is according to the Rambam, if I forgot to do haseba is a mitzvah atzma'it, it's independent. Meaning it's ra'ui, it's fitting that it should be, when I eat my matzah, I should be leaning.
But he's saying,
but if I didn't...
But then he's saying you don't have the yakzor on the matzah. You can do it the second time on other food.
You could be medaik in the Rambam that being I could accomplish the mitzvah independently. So maybe even if I forgot to lean when I'm eating the matzah, that's okay because I'm going to accomplish the mitzvah haseba afterwards when I eat my eggs. In other words, according to the Grizz, it's going to come out that if you forgot to lean when you eat your matzah, the Rush says you got to go back and eat that matzah again because he understands that the Chachamim said, Chazal said, part of eating your matzah has to be done while you're leaning. In other words, the way to eat matzah has to have leaning along with it. But the Rambam, it seems like he's saying it's two separate mitzvahs. One is eating matzah, one is leaning. it's best to put them together because that's nice, but I don't have to because they're separate mitzvahs. L'chadchila, yes, but if I forgot, I wouldn't have to go back. Where did the Rambam come up with this idea that the mitzvah, that Haseba is a mitzvah tzma'it? It's a standalone mitzvah. What's prompting the Rambam to take that approach, not like the Rush? That's our third question. That's the end of the questions. Yeah?
Would the same apply according to the Rambam regarding Arbakosot?
According to the Grizz, good question. According to the Grizz, probably, yeah.
Okay.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's because it says you should view yourself
Oh.
as if you came out of Egypt,
So,
not yourselves.
so it's going to be tied in, right? It's going to be. So you're right. I think you're right. It's all part of the Rambam. The Rambam's tied in. Laharos. They're all connected up. He's got a different approach to things. And the question is going to be what prompted the Rambam. But you're right. So okay, let's just do real quickly. Yeah, we're just going to take a look real quick. We're on time. Yeah, one more question.
What was going on at the Rambam time that he had to do?
I think the Rambam, it's a good question. That's interesting. Sometimes been hugged. Oh, that's not for now. But the Rav Yah, for example, is going to start talking about women, whether they're leaning or not. The Rav Yah is the first one who talks about, first of all, that al-chashiv. It's the Rav Yah. Rav Yah talks about that nowadays maybe we don't have to lean because we don't do that anymore. You're right. History does have an effect upon certain mitzvahs. But the Rambam's defining for us over here the mitzvah deraisa or the takanas of Chachamim out of the Gemara. So it's not going to be affected by the history of his time.
Isn't the whole thing to show the dignity, the power, the goodness of freedom to lean? And if leaning is a pain in the ass, what have you achieved?
That's the Rav Yah. That's the no, but that's going to be the Rav Yah.
There are a lot of takanot of Chazal that are a pain in the.
It's all beautiful. It's all beautiful.
You lean to the left or to the right.
That's biology. That's Pashut physiology. All right. So anyway, let's just on regular achas. Let's just go over. We had 3 points.
I just want to say it's a silly argument and a waste of time. Leaning means this or like that. That's leaning.
That's not leading as dominant.
When I'll tell you, it's not at all. If I'm sitting at the table, even at a place that I'm not in my house, if I'm at, let's say I go away for a Shabbos and I only sit like this, and when I'm sitting at the mill like that, when I'm at my house, it's definitely like this. Even, I'm sorry to say that sometimes I'll cross my legs. I know it's not miturbat. It's not. How do you say that in English? Dignified, polite. But it's my house. I do what I want. At the Pesach Seder, my wife won't let me bring barbecue sauce in the. I'm from New York, right? Barbecue sauce in the bottle. I have to pour it into a little monkey dish, she calls them, because it's pasta. At the Seder night, I'm sitting, I got my chair slightly, and I'm like having just a good time like that. It's not a silly thing. It's a matter of really getting into it. I'm feeling good. I'm relaxing. I'm a king. I'm a king not only of my house, I'm a king of the world. It's not lo bichdi. When the Chazal come up with these takanot, you put them all together, it paints a beautiful picture. And the kosot, and the matzah, and the seib, and all stuff.
But that's described in a rational way. But to spend time with a shokol like this and a shokol like that, it's nonsense and a waste of time.
All right, so let's go back to ours. Let's go back to concrete stuff. So here we go. So what do we say? We ask, why is it that the Rambam switches from the Mishnah instead of to lir'ot, to view, but he says lehar'ot, to show yourself? Question 1. Question 2, if kosot are din derabanan, and I have a suffix derabanan l'kula, so I should not have to lean at all. The Ran gives reasons why we do lean, even though it's derabanan. We're looking for another answer. And the third question we have is that the Rambam seems to understand that the mitzvah haseba is a independent mitzvah of eating the matzah, and we want to understand what's prompting the Rambam. So now we're going to get to the remaining time. Let's take a look. We're at number 9, and we're going to have some. Let's take a look at how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what was in God's mind when He described the Seder night. And God's a pretty good educator. I had a Rebbe of mine who used to always say that, you ever notice how many stories are in the Torah? Hashem knew stories sell, right? It's something to keep in mind when we're teaching. So, number 9 on the page. The Sefer HaChinuch, I think we're familiar with, right? That the Sefer HaChinuch, we're not sure if it's who wrote it, but he says in his introduction that he wrote it as a bar mitzvah present. That we could give, that would be the bar mitzvah present. But he gave his son a bar mitzvah present in which he wrote out the Sefer HaChinuch. What's the Sefer HaChinuch? We're familiar. It's a listing of the mitzvot based on the Rambam's listing. And then it will give you, it always has 4 paragraphs to every mitzvah. The first is a basic definition. The second one is always called Mishorshei HaMitzvah, the root of the mitzvah. In other words, what's the understanding? He was giving Tamei HaMitzvot. And the Sefer HaChinuch is a Rishon. So it's very authoritative, but he gives reasons behind the mitzvah. Okay, so that's going to be the Sefer HaChinuch. So in Sefer Bereishis, we only have 3 mitzvot, right? When we get to Sefer Shmos, we start out with the mitzvah of Chodesh Hazeh Lachem, and then right away mitzvah Hey and onwards up until Tet Zayin has to do with the Korban Pesach. We have a bunch of that's your 16 mitzvot or so for Korban Pesach. So, for example, I only picked a few out of all that's listed, but we'll figure this out together. The ones I picked were mitzvah Hey. There's a mitzvah to be shchitas ha-Pesach, that you have to be shochet the Pesach, Korban itself. 6, mitzvah achila. Not only do you shochet the Korban, but you have to eat a kazayas of the Korban. Zayin, shelo lechol Pesach na'u mevushal. Right? That you're not allowed to eat the Pesach boiled, right? Potted, boiled. It has, right? The Pesach has to be grilled, which is why we do the opposite. Our minhag is not to eat grilled, not only meat but also chicken. We don't eat grilled on the Seder night because we want people to think it's a mistake, that as if we actually had a korban over here. Like, that's only the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach has to be grilled. It can't be put. It's a question about potted, but it can't be boiled up in like a soup kind of thing. Okay, cholent. For those of you who are anti-cholent, you have a proof. Mitzvah Chet. Shelo lahotir mibsar Pesach l'machorto. You're not allowed to leave over from the Korban Pesach. Meaning, you got to know how many people are coming to. It's called a chabur. You had to assign people before Pesach comes in. You have to sign yourself up on a particular animal. So based upon the amount of people in your chabura, in the chevra, in your chabura, that's the size of the animal you'll get, or the opposite. If you have a large animal, invite a whole bunch of people in beforehand, before Pesach. You got to finish up all the meat. No leftovers. Mitzvah Tet Vav. Shelo lotzimi bar b'sar Pesach chutza. Wherever you and your friends, the chabura, are sitting, you're not allowed to take the korban, the meat of the Korban Pesach out of that area. It's a designated area. And Mitzvah Tet Zayin. Shelo l'shpor etzem min ha-Pesach. You're not allowed to break the bones from the, suck the marrow. From marrow, thank you. It's been a while. From the Korban Pesach. Okay, these are 6. I gave you 6 mitzvot. What's the idea behind these mitzvot? It's a peculiar way. It's all about how to eat that Korban Pesach. So to start us off, I want to take a look at. We're doing number 10 now, mitzvah Chet, and here's what the Sefer HaChinuch explains, and then we'll try to figure out how this fits into all the different mitzvot. He says like this. This is on a mitzvah of that you can't leave over from the korban until the next day. He says, Mishorshei mitzvah zu, that the root of this mitzvah, in other words, the understanding philosophically of this mitzvah, is Masha Katuv b'shchitato l'zecha nisei Mitzrayim. He says, I've written this already. It's all about to remind us that we left Mitzrayim, and that we're a malchut, we're b'nei melachim, we're kings, free people. That which we're commanded not to leave over. It's like how kings and ministers, that's how they eat. They don't eat leftovers. They don't leave over the food. Every day is fresh. If you're a king, you're not having leftovers. Right? Sunday night, this might resonate by some people here. I'm old enough that it. Sunday night in my house growing up in America was always leftovers and the wonderful world of Disney. Does that resonate by anybody over here? Sunday night, 7:30. Okay. So in your nuk derech melachim, that what is it? The kings don't have leftovers. And therefore it says that if you leave over from the Korban Pesach, it has to be burnt up as if you don't care about it. And it's like, this food, we're not going to use it. It's going to be old already by tomorrow. Let's burn it up. Like the kings of the world. And all this is in order for us to remember and to set it up in our hearts. Hashem Yisbarach v'nasenu b'nei chorim v'zachina l'malchut v'gugula, to remind ourselves that on Pesach God made us into a mamlechas kohanim, to a nation of kings. That's the understanding that the Sefer Chinuch gives for most of the mitzvot, all the mitzvos actually, of the Korban Pesach. So let's go back again. Let's look at mitzvah Vav. No, okay, that's right. That's the mitzvah also. He says in mitzvah Vav, achilas basar Pesach, you have to eat from the Korban Pesach. Why can't you eat boiled? Why can't you eat boiled? Why can't you boil your Korban Pesach? Use the same theme. Same mindset. What's wrong with boiled meat? Kings don't eat boiled. What do kings eat? Grill. Right. Kings only. Why? What's the difference? It's not only because of the taste. What's the difference? Why would a poor person boil their meat? One will get more out of it, right? You get a soup, you get, and it doesn't shrink the meat. So poor people are going to boil the meat. Kings are able to afford that you grill, and the meat shrinks. So that's
on Pesach. On Pesach, on the day.
On the day.
You can do a barbecue. What do you pay?
It's getting popular. I still am I'm old traditional, but on Pesach I always smell the barbecues in my neighborhood that people. It's becoming very popular because you could cook on Yom Tov, so you just don't light a match, but you have a fire going and you just. So the idea Leilachol Pesach, you have to eat the Pesach grill because you're a king and queen. We're Mamlechas Kohanim. Shalol Otir, we did that. Why can't Lolo Tzimi Basar Pesach Chutzi? You can't send your parts of the Korban Pesach outwards. Don't send it out of the room. Huh? It has to be for the chabur, but that's true. But why can't you send it to the person across the street?
King's house and saying, "I want a doggy bag to take it home."
Right, because it's the same thing. Like poor people, actually, right? It's like if you were fortunate all of a sudden to get a nice piece of meat, you're poor. You say, you know what? Your good friend, your good neighbor across the way. You just cut off a couple of slices. You say, hey, take it over, and you tell your kid, go take this over to our friends, the neighbors. Like, let them also enjoy. You want to share it. Kings don't do that. You want to invite somebody to the palace. You're not involved in that kind of stuff. Lastly, what about breaking the bones? The marrow.
It's healthy for you.
It is, but
Comes right out of the
kings don't break
right out of the
bones.
top.
It's not. You eat it and you leave it. You're not going to start sucking out everything. It's not the way kings. So it's interesting that the Sefer Chinuch repeats himself over and over. That this is the idea behind it. If you look at number 11, so he goes and he explains all of these mitzvot along the same line. Now, don't forget, what was the purpose of this Sefer that he wrote? It was a bar mitzvah present, right, for his kid. That's why he wrote the Sefer Chinuch. He wanted to give it to his son as a bar mitzvah present. So he says to his son, number 11, my kid, don't try to catch me over here. Kids are kids. Why would God give us so many mitzvahs to teach us the exact same thing? Like, what kind of a book is this, right? You just started off the book, and so you're just repeating yourself. All we needed is one mitzvah to teach us this idea that we should recognize that view ourselves as kings. Wouldn't be forgotten from our kids. You should know, says the Sefer Chinuch. This is a famous Sefer Chinuch. I think anybody taking a bagrut, you should ask Hila. Most people on their bagrut have had this Sefer Chinuch. Is that true? Not true? You had it. Okay. Da, ki adam nif'al kafi pulatav, a person is always going to act based upon his actions. In other words, you get accustomed to doing things. V'libav v'chol makshavotav tamid, and your heart and all of your thoughts always, achar ma'asav she'osek behem, he's going to follow his actions. In other words, eventually his heart, his feelings, and his mind is going to be changed based upon what he does. Im tov im ra, either for good or for bad. I feel the Rasha Gamor Bilvavo. A person's an evil person. He's just a terrible person, has bad ideas. If he should work hard and try, and then do Torah mitzvos, even if he does it shalom Hashem shamayim, miyad yinetel tov, he will eventually be wanting to do, he'll change himself inside. And this is the concept, mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. Do something for not pure reasons, but you're being osik in the midst, it's going to have an effect upon you. The Sefer Chinuch goes on afterwards to say, let's finish up. His actions will get rid of the Yetzer Hara. Ki acharei ha'pulot. This is the famous line. Everyone quotes this Sefer Chinuch. Acharei ha'pulot nimshachim ha'levavot. Based after your actions, nimshachim ha'levavot, your hearts are drawn. Or it's an interesting idea. He says after you can have a Rasha who marries a Tzadekis, he'll become a Tzaddik. You have a Tzaddik who marries a Risha'ah, he'll become a Rasha. It's what you do, whether you like it or not, is going to have an effect upon you. Interesting. Now you can either take this on, and I understand this. Do we have psychologists in the room? No psychologists. Well, okay. So you can either understand this as being a neshama thing. When I'm doing mitzvahs, it affects my neshama, and therefore eventually I become a tzaddik. Or you could understand it as, what's it called? Cognitive dissonance. Anybody, even if you're not a psychologist, such as me, but that's couch potato psychology. You got two groups, all right? You got two groups, right, of college students, all right? They both hate peas. This is a true thing. They both hate peas. One group is getting paid $20 a day to eat peas. The other group is not getting paid anything, but they're part of they eat it because they're part of the study. At the end of the week, which group likes peas? Counterintuitive. The guy's getting paid $20. He's sitting there and he's gagging on the peas, like me, and he's saying, "What am I doing this for?" And what's the answer? Because I got $20. The other group says, "What am I doing this for? I don't get it. This in my cognitively, there's a dissonance. I don't get it. Why would I be eating peas? I don't like peas. What's going on over here?" So either it has to come out that I stop eating those peas, or I must like those peas. This is straight up. Take a look. It's really interesting stuff. Couch potato psychology. So here we go. That's the psychology. So some people say that's how God Baruch Hu programmed us. God programmed us so that we should be. That based upon our actions, we just change. And this is why that a person who's chote v'mishanebo, a person does a chait and does another chait, eventually you make your mutar for yourself. If you look at Rav Dessler and his explanation of that God hardened Paro's heart, he talks about this in psychological terms. That Paro kind of did it to himself because that's the way God set up humans. So very fascinating. So that's what the Sefer Chinuch says to his son. God made us lock it in. So the whole night long we're acting like kings because the way we eat. And that's taking us a while. And that's supposed to be, Hashem understood pedagogically over here, is that, you have to not only just relate to the Korban Pesach, shechted, and just eat it. But like when we're eating at the table on Shabbos, do we really think all the time that we're eating, this is Mitzvah Onik Shabbos, or are we just enjoying the food? That here it is that the whole night long I'm eating in a certain fashion because Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be actively, physically involved in laharot et atzmo, to show yourself is that you're a king. And it's not only stops over there, even with that which you'd call more intellectual, such as the speaking part of the Seder night. Number 12 on your page, we'll do this quickly, says the famous Reb Chaim. The Reb Chaim asks the following question. Hinei b'chol laila yesh mitzvah shel zchirat yitzias Mitzrayim. Every day Twice a day we have a mitzvah of Zeicher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. We accomplished it when? Kriyat Shema, right? The third parsha of Kriyat Shema. So therefore he asks Reb Chaim, V'im kein manit v'saf b'leil Pesach b'mitzvah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. I have a special mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. What's the difference between Zeicher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim that I have every single day and the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim which I have on the Seder night? So what's the difference between a Zeicher and a Sipur? Zeicher I get. Zeicher all I have to do is say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, thanks a lot, you took us out of Mitzrayim Yishkoyach. That's Zeicher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. I mentioned it and I did the mitzvah. What's a Sipur? How do you do a Sipur? Anybody here have ever been involved in telling over, like especially little kids, you want to tell a good story, so maybe you have a librarian in the room. What's a Sipur? There's 3 parts to a good story. A good storyteller. What's the 3 parts to a good story? Huh? First of all, you have to, when you want to tell a good story, what do you have to do? You got to first... Oh, you told the little kids. You know what happened next? No, what happened next? And you know what he was wearing? And then he opened the door, and you know what he saw? Got to ask questions, right? When ask a question telling a story, what does that do? Gets them involved. Yefeh, right? It's the give and take, going back and forth. Next, what else do you have to do? And he was wearing a beautiful robe, and the robe had shiny buttons, and it had little tassels, and it had bells. You get into the details. You got to tell all the story. You have to get into all the major details. These are important. What's the third part of telling a great story? I'll tell you the end of it. What's the end? It always ends and they lived happily ever after. A good story's got drama to it, right? It's got the suspense. It starts out really bad and then it gets better. Starts out really bad like Avadim Hayinu, the Pharaoh b'Mitzrayim, we were slaves. Or B'tchila Ovdei Avodah Zara. Oy. At first we used to be idol worshippers. Oh, that's terrible. Matchilim b'gnut, u'misayim b'shvach. These are all part of a good story. Says Reb Chaim, we'll jump through it. Says Reb Chaim, look at the Aleph, this is 4 lines down. L'kayim mitzvat tzchira ein tzarech ela lahaskir la'atzmo yitzias mitzrayim. You just have to say, God, you took us out of Egypt, yashakah. Aber b'sipur yitzias mitzrayim mitzvah he, the bold print, l'sapir la'acher derech she'ela v'tshuva. You have to go back and forth. It has to be give and take. And that's why this happens in the army a lot, that if you are on guard duty at the time that it's this, you're on from 6 to 12, 6 to Chatzot. You're standing by yourself up in a someplace. So when you say the Seder, you have to talk to yourself. Somebody looking from the outside might think you're nuts, but you have to say it, you have to talk to yourself. Because it's part of Sipur is the She'ela and the Tshuva. Jump over to Bet, next bold print. You got to get into all of the details and all of the suspense from the story. You start out with denigration of Am Yisrael, l'sayim b'shvach, and you come out with the praise that Kadosh Baruch Hu is kiravnu l'makom, or that Gaal Yisrael. And number 3, Gimel, mitzvah l'saper tamei mitzvot shel oto alayla. And you also have to get into the mitzvah, the details of the night, the mitzvah. What is that? At the very end, what do we say? Rabban Gamliel says, Kol shalo omar shloshet devar me'elo lo yatsa yedei chalvato. Pesach, matzah, mora. You got to say that. If you don't say it, because you got to get the crux in also. And that's why if you look at the bottom over here, these 3 things, the Rambam, he says before, it's a lengthy Rambam when he goes through it. Kosab mitzvahs asay shel Torah lesaper b'nisa v'niflot shenasu lavoseinu b'mitzrayim b'leil tetva b'nisan shenemar zochor. Remember that God took you out of Mitzrayim. That's called so we see that on a D'oraita level, on a Torah level, God says, I want you, even just when it comes to the talking part, which I guess we'd say is intellectual, it's got to be different. It's got to be much more involved. And very nicely, if you look at number 13, Rav Aryeh Pomeranchik, he was a Rav in Tel Aviv. He says, he starts out and he says, this is exactly what the Seder. You want to give a structure to your Seder? What do we start out with in the Seder night? Look at number 13, second line. We got that story. Everyone loves that story. Hareni keben shivim shana v'lo zchiti shitomer yitzias mitzrayim baleilot. Elazar ben Azariah, who's 17, says I'm like keben shivim shana. I'm all of a sudden, Gemara and Brachos, right? He became older. He says, I didn't know that you're supposed to mention Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim every single night throughout the year. I didn't know that until Ben Zohar was Dorish. What's got to do with tonight? That's Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's not tonight's Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why do you start off the Haggadah like that? So he says it's obvious. Why? Because I'm saying there is a din of Zeicher, but tonight, Manishtana, tonight's going to be different. Tonight's Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. How's it different? Well, then the next thing you're going to get to is Keneged Arba Banim. What do you mean Keneged Arba Banim? Pencils at your table, because what's the first part? Sheilot to Chuvot, the give and take. So who's at your Seder? You got to be appropriate so you get an answer. You ask them a question, they'll give you an answer. Then number bet, you matchil, then it starts Avadim. You know the fire of Mitzrayim? That's matchil beganut Mitzrayim b'shvach. And when you finish that story with all the details and the midrashim, it's all midrashim, right? Now God is all midrashim. They just take the that nucleus of the vidui from Bikurim. It's a basic history lesson of the Jewish people, and he filled in midrashim. And then at the very end, Gimel Rabban Gamliel talks about Pesach, Matzah, and Mari mentioned the crux, the Tamei mitzvot, and then we get to it's over. That's Hallel. That's the structure of the Seder night. It's exactly accomplishing the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Or the Rama says this is known to us because it says a pasuk of Zochor. You have to remember. We always have Zochar. The Ramban goes to town. Right? This morning we said Yom Chamishi b'Shabbat. That's a kiyum mitzvah deraisa. I was Zochar Shabbos during the week. I did Shmir Shabbos during the week. Whenever you have Zochar, that's a kiyum deraisa. If I go to the store now and find something special for Shabbos and I grab it, I'm observing Shabbos on Thursday. So let's answer our questions then. Says the Rambam. What was our first question? The Rambam says that it's not Lurotet, that's small. What is it? Laharo. Why? It's obvious, right? You have to be Zachar. It's all part, because the Chazal always looked over the shoulders at the Torah. And what did God say to us? God said, tonight I want you to act it out. He said, I want you to act it out. He's got a bunch of mitzvahs, how to eat that Korban Pesach. He says, you know what? It's not, just don't mention it. I want you to really get into it. You have to talk. Be talkative. You got to talk it out. That's from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So it's easy, obviously. So the Rambam says, obviously, Chayiv lahar otet datzmo. It's straight up there in the Torah. And the Torah says, Zachor, you have to remember, Zachar to Kiev to Yitaber, you have to remember. How do you remember? So you got to do that. But how do you define Zachor? And that's also going to be, by the way, when the Rambam, what's the Rambam say? Where did the Rambam get the idea that there's a mitzvah, an independent mitzvah of leaning the entire night? It's obvious. And therefore, if I forgot to lean when I eat the matzah, it's not a big deal. I'll lean when I eat the egg. Where's he getting that from? Because he understands that that's the mitzvah of the night. And the last thing's like this. How do I define Zohar? How do you define Zohar? I don't know. Maybe it means buy little plastic frogs and throw it at people. Define for me Zohar. I have a mitzvah. I'm not allowed to do malacha on Chol HaMoed. That's a deraisa mitzvah. Or what's the definition of malacha on Chol HaMoed? Chachamim come by and they explain to you what's the deraisa. Now, is that a din derabana or a din deraisa? The rabbis are defining for you the deraisa. Anyen, that's another share, right? But how do you define Zohar? How do I accomplish kiyum? What's a kiyum of Zohar on the Seder night? Well, I know there's a mitzvah Seder that's independent that the rabbis gave me. And also, what else? I don't know what else. And also, maybe I have to drink 4 cups of wine. Maybe 4 cups of wine, I know it's a takana d'Rabbanan, but maybe it's Rabbi Cheskel Yaakov, former Rosh Yeshiva in Shalavim. I heard this from him. Maybe the Rambam says, yeah, it's a takana d'Rabbanan, but it's a takana d'Rabbanan which is defining the mitzvah d'Oraisa of Zoharta. Oh, wait a second. So that means it's not a safek d'Rabbanan. What is it? A safek d'oraita. It's a safek, a doubt on how to accomplish a mitzvah from the Torah, a mitzvah d'oraita. And we say, safek d'oraita l'chumra. When it comes to if I'm going to accomplish that mitzvah d'oraita or not, I always go, I'm always more stringent. I make sure to go back and do it again. So you want to answer the Ran's question? Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula. Why am I? Never even started according to the Rambam. Obviously it's safek d'oraita The chumrah is what we're discussing over here. And that's how the Rambam understood. That's why it wasn't a problem for the Rambam. We say, what do we say? Hemanti, remember this on the Hallel, what do we say? Hemanti ki adaber, ani aniti me'od. Hemanti ki adaber, right? I will understand, I'll have faith, hemanti ki adaber, when I speak it out. It says the Rebbe Mislonim, the more you speak it out, the more you have understand. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim goes the entire night. It's like a taxi meter, just keeps going. Why? If I pick up a lulav and esrog, I'm yotzei my mitzvah. But if I say, okay, we left Mitzrayim, I did the mitzvah. But if I keep talking about it and doing the mitzvah again and again and again and again, I could do the mitzvah all night long. Why? That's Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Whoever heard of such a mitzvah? Why, says the Rebbe Mislonim? Hemanti ki adaber. It's an opportunity on the Seder night to act it out, to understand it, to talk about, to understand what Jewish, what it means to be a Jew, and what it means our kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, I really put my efforts into it so that I should be able to walk out of Leil Seder with a good understanding of what it is to be Jewish, get ready to start climbing towards Matan Torah, Kabbalas Torah on Shavuos, and to head into the whole year really zooped up. Shkach, Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Okay, did I explain it? Okay, Shkach. It's always so much fun.
I give it to my grandson.
So look at it.
Yeah, the ones in